Throughout this tutorial, you'll be creating a promotional video for H5 Productions, an aerial cinematography production company based in Scottsdale, Arizona. To create the library we'll be working from, go to the File menu and choose New Library. A window will appear asking you where you want to store your library. Final Cut Pro will allow you to store your library on any connected device. If you don't have an external media drive, you can still follow along by choosing the Movies folder to store your library. Name the library H5 Productions and click Save. In the Libraries pane, our new library appears with a single event. Click once on the event name and type out SaberCat. When you create a new library, a window appears in the upper right of the interface called the Library Properties Inspector. If you're not seeing this window, make sure the library is selected, then click the Inspector button on the toolbar. At the top of the inspector is the name of the currently selected library and where it is located on your hard drive. Because I saved the library into my Home User Movies folder, Macintosh HD is the reported location. Below the heading Storage Locations are 4 subsections labeled Media, Motion Content, Cache, and Backups. Let's quickly look at each in turn. Media is an umbrella term that indicates any video clips, sound files, photos, and graphics that you import into Final Cut Pro from a connected camera, flash memory card, or hard drive. By default, Final Cut Pro will always place media inside the library if you take no further action. This is the default option whenever you create a new library because it simplifies the process of transferring, sharing, and archiving your media. If you think of a library like a suitcase, then whenever you copy or move the library to another drive or computer, all the media goes with it. The next option, in Motion Templates folder, is the storage location for any effects, transitions, titles, and generators that were created or modified using Apple's Motion. Cache determines where render and analysis files are stored. These are the files that Final Cut Pro generates for the highest quality playback of effects, transitions, and titles. Backups are also files that are generated by Final Cut Pro to protect your work in case your library becomes corrupted or is accidentally deleted. By default, Final Cut Pro places your media, cache, and backups inside the library, what Apple refers to as a managed library. If you're coming from iMovie, creating a managed library is your only option. The only content not stored in the library are the projects you create and modify in Motion. By default, these reside in the User's Movies folder in a subfolder called Motion Templates. In some cases, however, managed libraries are not the best option, particularly if you plan on collaborating with other editors in a networked environment. In order for another editor to have access to the media you've imported, you'll want to store your media outside the library, what Apple refers to as external media. Let's say there'll be 2 editors working on our H5 promotional video, and both editors need access to the same media to cut different versions of the promo. Rather than storing the media inside the library, where only one editor at a time has access to it, the media can be stored in external folders, where both editors can access it at any time. When setting up your library for the first time, it's important to decide whether you want your media managed or external before you begin importing media. With the library selected, click the Modify Settings button next to Storage. A window will appear allowing you to choose a different storage location for your media, cache, and backup files. Notice the library is the default destination for both media and cache files. In other words, a managed library. To choose an external location for your media, select Choose from the pop-up menu. Locate a connected desktop or networked attached storage device from the Finder sidebar, then click the New Folder button. I'll name this folder H5 Media, click Create, then Choose. Click OK to close the window. In the Media section, the folder I just created is now the target location for any media I import into Final Cut Pro. And because this folder is external to the library, any editor can access it. Another benefit for storing your media outside the library is that it keeps your library files small, and because they're small, they can be more easily moved, copied, and shared. Setting up a collaborative editing workflow is beyond the scope of this tutorial, but if you're interested in learning more, we've created an entire tutorial on this subject called Media Management in Final Cut Pro X. As mentioned earlier, cache files are the files that Final Cut Pro generates in order for high-quality playback of effects, titles, and transitions. Because these files are workstation specific and can be easily deleted and regenerated within Final Cut Pro, I recommend leaving them in their default locations. Multiple editors working with shared media, but on different projects, will rarely, if ever, need access to shared cache and backup files. Let's set the library storage back to In Library. Click the Modify Settings button, set the media pop-up to In Library, then click OK. Before you begin organizing and editing your project, the final step in the workflow is to import footage from your camera or hard drive into a designated library containing one or more events. You'll be introduced to Final Cut Pro's import window in this chapter, but only as a means to demonstrate how and where media files are managed and stored. In the following lessons, I'll cover importing in much greater detail. To follow along, locate the Final Cut Pro 10 librarymedia.zip file you downloaded to follow along with this tutorial. This file should be located in your Downloads folder, unless you have a different Downloads folder specified in your browser's preferences. Drag the file to your desktop and double-click it to extract the files. A folder will appear on the desktop. At this point, you can delete the original zip file. Double-click to open the folder to reveal its contents. You should see a retro-looking film canister, a folder, and a library. With the SaberCAD event selected, you can bring up the Media Import window by clicking the obvious button in the browser pane, or you can click the not-so-obvious button in the upper toolbar. The Media Import window appears, presenting all your import targets in one place. In the upper left sidebar, you'll see sections labeled Cameras, Devices, and Favorites. We'll cover each of these sections as we go along. For now, select Desktop. Then in the Browse List window, locate the folder of media you extracted a few moments ago. You should see two items, an archive labeled EOS Digital H5 and a folder labeled H5 Event Media. The item we're interested in at the moment is the EOS Digital Archive, the one that looks like a film canister. Click the right-facing arrow to the immediate left of the icon to reveal its contents. Selecting any clip will load it into the viewer directly above. You can play a clip by pressing your spacebar. For this lesson, I'm going to have you import only a single clip to make some key points about media storage. Before importing the clip, you'll want to check your import options listed in the vertical pane at the right side of the window. While not visually evident, the pane is divided into two sections. The area at the top of the pane determines where your media will exist within Final Cut Pro. The area at the bottom determines where your media will exist on your Mac storage devices. You can either add your media to an existing event, or you can create a new event to add the media into. Because we selected the SaberCAD event before opening the import window, this is the event that is targeted at the top of the window. If you click the Add to Existing Event pop-up menu, you'll see a list of available events you can add your media into. Just above the event are the names of the libraries the event belongs to. In the previous lesson on working with libraries, we created a library called Discover the Southwest, then proceeded to create 3 events based on 3 southwestern states. We also created a library called H5 Productions that includes the SaberCAD event. You can create an entirely new event by clicking this button. This option saves you from having to cancel out of the import window in order to create a new event in your library. The available libraries from which to create the event appear in this pop-up menu. Since we already have an event in the library, we'll choose Add to Existing Event. Let's look at where the media will reside on your hard drive using the options listed in the Files section. Each of these sections can be hidden to simplify the interface. In most cases, you'll be importing video, audio, or still images directly from a camera's flash memory card, or a duplicate of the camera's card called a camera archive. In other cases, you'll be importing directly from an attached storage device, such as an external hard drive, where the media files exist in a predetermined directory structure. If you look at the browse list, I'm about to import this clip from a camera archive. A camera archive is functionally no different than the original camera media. In fact, it's a clone of it. I'll cover camera archives in more detail in the next lesson. Because we chose In Library when we set up the storage locations in the inspector, the media files will be copied directly into the library. In other words, a managed library. If you're importing from a camera, memory card, or camera archive, this is your only option. I'll have more to say about this in the next lesson. Let's import some media. With the clip selected in the Browse list and the SaberCAT event selected as the import target, click Import Selected. The imported clip appears in the event browser. Right-click on it and choose Reveal in Finder. Final Cut Pro takes you to where the media file lives inside the library. If I expand the window, you can see the entire path, starting from the H5 Productions library itself, then a breadcrumb trail taking you to the SaberCAT folder, and finally to the original media folder where you can see your imported clip. Now let's look at the second import option, Leave Files in Place. Call up the import window by pressing Command-I. In the Browse list, locate the camera archive you just imported from and click the disclosure triangle to hide its contents. Now click the triangle next to H5 Event Media to reveal its contents. Here we see a group of folders with specific labels relative to the media they contain. Locate the Aerials folder and click the triangle to reveal its contents. Select any clip in the folder. Because we're selecting a media file that already exists in a Mac folder and not on a formatted memory card or camera archive, we have the option to either copy the file to the library or leave the file in place. Leave Files in Place would be the option you would choose if you needed to import pre-existing media files from a large desktop or network-attached storage device. During import, Final Cut Pro creates tiny reference files called symlinks inside the library that point to the media in its current location. Because of this, importing from a drive of pre-existing media is extremely fast because no files are actually copied into the library. The one thing you should keep in mind is that if you do decide to leave files in place, your media could potentially go offline if the drive you're importing from is disconnected or becomes unavailable. The good news is you're never stuck with your decisions. If you choose Leave Files in Place, you can always copy the files into your library later, or if you choose Copy to Library, you can always move your media out of the library to an external location. But again, that's a topic for another tutorial. Click Import Selected. Right-click on the clip in the event browser and choose Reveal in Finder, and you're taken to the actual media file that is stored in the Aerials folder on your desktop, or wherever the folder currently exists on your Mac. In terms of performance, Final Cut Pro doesn't care if the media exists inside the library or outside of it, and the library will keep track of both managed and external media files. Before we move on, let's delete the two clips we imported by selecting them, right-clicking and choosing Move to Trash. Final Cut Pro will never trash media that resides in external media locations, but it will trash media that's been copied into the library. In the next lesson, we'll look at importing media from cameras.